Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Board of Education workshop meeting. Today is Tuesday, the 21st, 2025. The time is now 7:03 p.m. With me this evening, I have board members Jasmine Prissy, Mary Ellen Flaherty Ludwig, Sherry
I
McCready,
swear I'm gonna get adjustment.
Sherry McCready Pritchett, Kara Bakey, Ashley Goulias, Howard White, and virtually we have Colin Hostin. We also have Dr. Estrella and her cabinet available this evening. We could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you everyone for being here, and
Gracias por estar aquí.
we have an evening planned with lots of information, and I'm transferring the meeting to Dr. Alexandra Estrella for the evening.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this wonderful workshop that we have organized, not only to inform the public, but also to provide insight to the board. We have three topics that we want to discuss this evening. We're going to be forming a fishbowl that will allow us to have multiple conversations happening spontaneously and also allow people to cycle through these conversations. The first topic will be around the portrait of a graduate. We've been embedding a significant amount of work around our portrait of a graduate, which is tied to our strategic priorities. And we've had a lot of conversation about how the portrait of a graduate is being influenced, or what are some of the things we have to think about as artificial intelligence continues to play an active role, not only in the workforce, but also in the day-to-day learning of our scholars. And if you have youngsters at home, you would know that they are already engaging and experimenting with a lot of AI tools in their own personal time, and in many cases utilizing it to aid and facilitate learning. So we want to make sure that as we think through our work, as we further design the elements and the competencies within our portrait of a graduate, that we're keeping artificial intelligence top of mind. So today, one of the triads will have Kimberly talking about some of the work that she's been doing in collaboration with other members of our team around how do we refine the work we're doing of the portrait of a graduate to well align it to the work around artificial intelligence. And we're doing that in collaboration with Digital Promise, which allows us to open our lens beyond just the work that we're doing here in the district, and allow us to have a national perspective in terms of what's happening across our nation and even the world in terms of student learning and how artificial intelligence is being infused, one, to facilitate planning and development for our educators, but also to enhance learning experiences in the classroom. So you will have an opportunity to learn more about that in that triad. The second topic that we are going to immerse ourselves in is around the student youth survey. As you know, we engage in this survey on a 2-year cycle. In this survey, we engage in collaboration with a number of partners, one of which is Positive Direction, as well as we talk to the Fairfield Guidance and a number of other partners to look at this data and inform our work as we further develop supports for our students around mental health services and making sure that the tools that we have in place, as well as personnel to provide mental health supports and interventions are well aligned to the goals that we've set, which are to reduce some of the elements that this survey will highlight for you shortly. So you'll have an opportunity to learn about the findings, which are quite positive. Many of the mental health supports that we've put into play in collaboration with our partners have yielded improvements in the outcomes that you will see presented in the survey today. And lastly, we will have a triad that will be focused around artificial intelligence and some of the implications that are already at play across the district. We have coaches that will talk about the work that's happening, as well as some students that are here that are also part of the superintendent student council group. So I'm very proud to see our scholars here and immersed in this important conversation and talking about what the work looks like now and what it will look like in the future. We're looking to segment these learning opportunities for the board and the public in a series of 3 months. So this is the first segment of a collection of learning experiences for the board as well as the public around what's happening within these topics, with some variation, particularly with the survey. The survey is just an experience for today, and we will embed other topics that relate to mental health, as well as some of the instructional practices that we're building across the district. Any questions from the board about the topics that we will be discussing this evening? So we're going to break into 3 stations. The first station will be led by Rob Pennington and Margaret Watt, who has been helping us with the survey. That group will be Rob located.
Or in the back room.
And we are going to start station 1 with Sherry, Jasmine, and Mary Ellen. Station 2 will be led by Sandra Fayoles and Kimberly Erickson. And that's the group that will focus on Portrait of a Graduate, and you guys are stationed
right outside.
Outside. And then station 3 is going to be led by Ralph Valancisi and a team of coaches as well as students. And that will happen in here.
Yeah.
And that group has Diana, Colin, and Howard. Kara, Ashley, and Janine will be joining station 2 outside. Okay, so we could transition to the different stations, please. Please make sure to take your materials because there are some resources that you will need as we circle through. Now, which station are you gonna?
I'm gonna be in that back room.
Okay,
And
so I'll stay in here.
I'm gonna be leading the portals. Yeah. Right?
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what we need.
So if you guys want to flip a couple chairs to make it easier to see. Then guys coming up and we'll just join the keyboard in a second to you. I'm gonna steal.
Brown Fury.
Yeah.
I think. It's be like a work. I didn't know, because sometimes I think that. Enjoy.
Yeah, but.
You could get started. I got the door.
What's that?
I got the door.
So, we're being here tonight, board members, you're gonna be hearing a couple of different things over the next few months around the work that we're doing in AI. And what I wanted to do is just kind of cue this up a little bit. Tonight, I'm kind of aligning this with Dr. Erickson, with Kimberly outside, and the way that she's explaining how this is aligned with the portrait of a graduate. So she'll be talking a lot about educator tools and like how we have to get our educators ready. So for tonight, we're going to actually see some concrete examples of what we're doing with our educators to prepare them for AI. And I'll introduce our coaches in a minute. In the next board meeting, we'll actually talk about some of the student tools that are actually being used. And then the following board meeting, we plan on having some students come in and talk a little bit about that as one of the triads. So that's kind of how we wanted to do this session over a period of months, to just kind of introduce you to some of the work that's going on as we explain that we have a professional learning plan and we're trying to make sure that we're covering all of our stakeholders. So with that, let me kind of shrink this up a little bit so you guys can see better in here. I just want to introduce to you guys Dan Kreines. Dan is our digital learning coach in Norwalk High. He just came back from the FETC conference and was presenting down there in Florida. I think was it actually on AI too as well, this presentation, or?
My presentations were not on AI, but emerging technologies like 3D printing that Dan and I have been doing somewhat together for the last couple of years, and also coaching through resistance. So dealing with resistant teachers. Sometimes we get those.
Dan Wabno. Dan is one of our coaches at for our elementary schools. And Dan's been doing, I mean, he's kind of become one of our 3D printing gurus, as well as doing a lot of that work. Each one of them kind of has their own specialty. And then we've got Maria Naughton, another one of our elementary school coaches. She's actually ViewSonic trained. And so each one of them, even though they have a specialty, has also branched out to do a lot of different work. And what they want to share with you tonight is some AI chatbots that we've developed. And then we got Dana. So, I mean, it's like we also have a AI advisory board in place, which includes teachers, administrators. Mary is on the advisory board as well, too. We've got members from the NFEP, and we have students. So we asked them to join to just kind of listen in and hear what's going on for tonight. And with that, we've got three different bots that we're going to go through tonight. There's one that we've got a new social studies curriculum, and Dan will be introducing you to a GPT that he's created for that. Yes.
I think for the sake of people who are new with this language, it would be helpful to describe what a bot is
Okay.
and what the purpose behind that is.
Cool. Well, so let me start with GPT, I guess, first. GPT the G in GPT stands for generative. So a lot of AI tools like ChatGPT that have come out over the past couple of years are in the form of this generative AI model, which basically means that they are trained on certain information and then they generate new information based on how they've been trained. So a bot is if you were to enter a chat with a GPT tool, you are conversing with it virtually and having that sort of chat back and forth while the AI bot, like a robot of sorts, is generating responses back to you based on what you are telling it or asking it, and again, how it's been trained.
Yeah, what's really great about these bots is that the big emphasis I like to put on for teachers is that it is conversational. So if there is something that the bot will generate that you maybe didn't want it to generate, you could follow it up. You could say, I really wasn't looking for that. I really need something with a little bit more differentiation, or I need something that's a little bit more simple for my grade level readers. So that's what's great. That's what's kind of like the difference between, your Google search, where you search for something, boom, results. This is more tailored. This is more like we could follow up. We could really have a conversation with these bots. They're really fantastic.
Right, and the bots that we're gonna show you, they have like a closed universe. We enter the knowledge base, and that's what responds to our questions. So it's not like you're going out to the internet and getting just anything. So we're gonna look at one tool that we used, which is po.com, and then ChatGPT. And the key is that we've closed the universe. You're not going out there and getting all kinds of stuff. So
And I think the important around that is the reduction of hallucination. Because a lot of these generative tools create a lot of hallucination. If you put something out, sometimes it pulls information that doesn't align with what you want it to focus on. So to reduce hallucinations, you create bots and control the information.
And from our point, the reason that we're actually looking to also purchase tools for next year in the budget is because a lot of those tools, as we start using with students, are a closed wall. So we will be getting information from the outside, but our data will not be, the data that's being generated is not going out. So it's really important that we keep that in mind for safety and security as we kind of figure out how to navigate these waters. But we do have one bot we're going to show you in just a minute, around our social studies curriculum that was developed this summer. And Dan sat on the curriculum writing committee as well and started developing a bot to be able to support that. Maria's going to talk through, Jim Knight has a coaching model, and we're going to talk through like some of the coaches. We've actually developed a bot to help them, support them, how they can actually come up with questioning and things that they need for their coaching. And I don't know, Dan, if you want to explain your bot that you've actually created too as well.
Yeah, I would love to, especially because Dr. Estrella led with the Portrait of a Graduate. So when the three of us, along with some other coaches, took an AI course, actually two of them, to learn the technology better, we were tasked, one of our weekly assignments was to create a chatbot and essentially kind of find a problem that we were looking to solve in education. And so I thought of, because we were doing at Norwalk High so much work early this school year around critical thinking and how that is aligned with and embedded in now the Portrait of a Graduate, I created a chatbot on serving educators to help them as planning partners to make sure that they're incorporating ample opportunities for critical thinking in their instruction. I don't know if you can get out of that. I do.
Yeah, I can.
I do have it queued up. I kind of ran through an example, but while Ralph is pulling that up, I trained the chatbot on several pieces of information regarding what critical thinking is. In education speak, when we talk about getting students to higher levels of thinking, we like to use something called depth of knowledge, which takes students through 4 levels of inquiry. So I fed it the depth of knowledge levels. I fed it the Portrait of a Graduate from Norwalk Public Schools. Yeah. And then can you click on the one that says algebra critical thinking?
Yes.
So this is my bot in action. If you could scroll all the way up. I feel bad. I'm telling them out there.
No, you can try.
Sure, we go. So just as an example, the 2 other instructional coaches at Norwalk High School and we have a math coach and a literacy coach. We ran actually similar station style professional development as kind of like we're doing tonight with our teachers, and I led one of these stations. And so I walked the teachers through how to use the bot. It starts out by kind of having a friendly greeting. Hi, teacher friend. I understand what you want to do. How can I help? I said to it, I'm a math teacher. Sorry. I'm a math teacher who teaches algebra. I got to spell a typo there. How can I make sure to include critical thinking in my lessons? And then it gave me, based on the information that I trained it with, a whole bunch of ideas. So everything from inquiry-based learning, hypothesis and conjecture, thinking routines, challenging students to justify and defend. I don't have to read through all of them, but what I landed on was, we've been talking to teachers at Norwalk High about thinking routines even before I started working there this year. So the next thing I asked the bot was, if I want to use thinking routines, can you tell me a little bit more about the one that you suggested, this think, puzzle, explore routine? And then it went through a whole plan for how to use that one particular thinking routine to, again, ramp up the level of thinking from the students, and why it would be effective to use in an algebra class. Activating prior knowledge, encouraging inquiry, planning for exploration, how to incorporate it. One of the things that I wanted to try and make a point to quickly mention tonight is that I know there's been some questions, at least among the education community, about is AI going to take over and take teachers' jobs away? Or another question is like, are we making it too easy for teachers now using things like this. I don't see it like that at all. I think neither of those things are true. And I think if anything, it's not making teaching easier, but it's equipping teachers with tools that they've never had before to really ramp up the level of instruction and personalized learning, especially that they can use now with the help of AI tools that in the past they've only had to kind of do either in isolation or maybe with just a few teachers around them. So I asked the chatbot next, can you help me plan an algebra lesson that fits into our curriculum, our current unit? And I looked at the Norwalk math curriculum and I said, here are the essential questions and here's the unit overview. And then it spit out an amazing lesson plan. Now, of course, being the responsible digital learning coach that I am and my colleagues, like we would never tell a teacher, just print out this lesson plan, turn it into your administrator, deliver it to your students. It's going to require a lot more tweaking and customizing from there because again, that's the teacher magic that AI can never replace. That teachers really know their students, they know the content, and they can make adjust the content to fit the needs of their students. So I would never recommend that a teacher go ahead and just print this and utilize it and declare it as their own work. But it is, again, a really powerful tool to be able to use AI as a thinking partner, a coach. Again, I don't think it's going to replace us either, but a sounding board. Hey, here's my content, here's my curriculum. I need to know how to fit student critical thinking in there better. Give me some ideas. It's been really successful. I literally, a little while after I presented this particular chatbot to teachers, I did have actually a world language teacher who came up to me and almost in tears, saying how much she really appreciated this. And I haven't tried this yet in Poe, but apparently she did, where she could actually translate the information that it was churning out as well. And it just meant so much to her to be able to use it as a thought partner and actually translate the information that was coming out of it as well.
I don't know if I know we don't have a lot of time
Sorry.
tonight. No, that's okay. So, I don't know, Maria, do you want to talk?
Well,
about
I'll just add to Dan Kay's because mine is similar to his, where we use the Poe engine. And I just want to point out some things about this because we entered in the data. This is the night coach one that I did, that we did. We were in the ISTE program. It was the grant funded ISTE General Motors course. So we did course 1 and course 2, all of us. One of the assignments was to create a bot. This one, we uploaded the Jim Knight Essentials of Coaching book, which the teachers have as well. And this bot allows the teachers to ask, the coaches to ask a question, how can I help a reluctant teacher? And if you enter that question, it will respond with excerpts and items that come from the book, suggestions from the book. And I don't know if you noticed it on Dan's, but there are footnotes within the responses. And if you click, see, here's a 1 and a 5. If you click on that, it'll take you to the section of the knowledge base that it got that information from. So it's really tight in how it's getting information from the source you defined. And that's really useful for the teachers. Another thing about this is as you're building these bots, you're defining how it interacts with teachers. So you tell the bot, you are a helpful coach. And when a teacher asks a question, you can ask a clarifying question, but then give advice. So you define everything in the back end. And when the teacher uses it, they'll ask a question and the bot might respond, tell me a little more about that. So it really tries to dig and, you can get the teachers to be more self-reflective by posing the bot and telling it to ask questions in that way. And you can ask it there are a lot of things you can customize on it, how to respond, be polite. So you can really create the bot that you want to create. And that's the Poe.com platform.
Mm-hmm.
So Dan did a different, Dan W. Used a different engine. That was the other thing I was going to say. These are powered. You choose the engine that you want to power this. Poe.com is a platform that uses multiple like GPT is one of the engines that uses, so you define which one you want. But Dan went right to GPT and
Yeah,
used more advanced features.
yeah, and I'm not seeing the tab up there, Ralph, but
Oh.
that's okay. But over the summer, I was invited to work on the new social studies curriculum for our middle schools. And one of the sitting in this room, we were all at Rowan, and one of the biggest things I observed is that a lot of the teachers and even people on the curriculum team, we really didn't truly understand what are the resources that we have here in the district to use as far as digital tools are concerned. There was a lot of gray area with all of that. So I saw that as an opportunity to create an own GPT specifically for these social studies teachers to know exactly what resources are available to them and are approved by Norwalk Public Schools. We get, as coaches, we get questions all the time. Are we allowed to use this? Are we allowed to use that? And this is kind of like bridging that gap between like, hey, what can I use? And better yet, how can I use it? So for example, if I'm a social studies teacher and I say like, how can I, and excuse my spelling, incorporate Minecraft, which we have at Minecraft Education, into my grade 6, unit 3. So now, there we go. So now, because I fed it all that information, it already has that prior knowledge of exactly what's unit 3 in grade 6. So if I go ahead and hit enter, it's now going to generate. It's right from ancient civilizations, and it's using the Connecticut state standards along with that inquiry-based model. So Minecraft Education has a couple of levels that the students can use to help them learn about this, either maybe create their own ancient civilization using Minecraft. But it will give you pretty much everything that you need to make this lesson successful. But again, as I said earlier, it is conversational. So this is giving me like days worth of lessons. So I can even stop it and I can say, I'm not superstitious, but I like to be polite to my AI. But this will be.
It has been found that when you're nice to it, it gives you better output.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you can actually, sometimes you even put in, I use prompts like, you are a distinguished assistant superintendent, and it actually, the output that you get is very different at times.
Right.
Mhm.
And I can even say the students earned Minecraft as a class reward. But still. Again, please.
Yeah.
Ignore my spelling. It knows what I'm trying to say. See, and it's conversational. It's like, cool, thanks for clarifying. Like, here you go, design an ancient city in Minecraft. And now it's going to make it so it is strictly that 45-minute class. If I needed to follow it up even more, I can even say like, look, I have students that maybe have mobility issues that can't use a mouse or can't use a trackpad. What are some things within the application I could use to help support those students? Because what's great about ChatGPT is that, yes, I created this GPT with that prior knowledge. However, it still has the vast array of information that ChatGPT has as well. So it will be able to pull from other sources as well. But again, it is like, we call it like the 80-20 rule, where 80% of the information is spit out through ChatGPT, wherever chatbot, and then the 20% is what the human is doing, overseeing it and saying, okay, am I making sure that these standards align? Am I making sure that these resources are available to me? Even though yes, we fed it all this information, there is still that off chance that it could be incorrect. But that's kind of why we're here as well, is that we're here to teach teachers those tools on how to spot those different things. What is something that you really need to look out for while using these? These tools are fantastic. We have teachers using them on a daily basis, and it's understanding, okay, that 80-20 rule. Really, that 20% is the human oversight. But we've been getting great feedback through these tools. It's kind of like magic when we show it to a few teachers. They're like, whoa. And it's that cool wow moment. And it's really cool to see where all this is going. And we expanded it too. Like I've made, there's actually one on the left-hand side there in say ELA lesson planner specifically for the Sono building. The Sono coach came to us with a task saying like, hey, my teachers are really struggling with lesson planning for the English language arts curriculum. And so we started designing chatbots to help those teachers, and we're going to present it to them hopefully by the end of the month. It's really cool.
Just wanted to add one more thing really quickly, because we've talked a lot about chatbots and the ones that we've made. There are a lot of other AI tools out there. I learned about many of them when I was at the conference last week. But a lot of the work that we're doing around the district, and I can speak specifically to Norwalk High School, since we've been very immersed recently in working with our teachers to get students to perform and achieve at higher levels on SAT and PSAT testing. There are tools that will allow teachers to do that to really align that better to their own curricular content areas versus going to College Board for sample questions. Teachers now can feed AI their curriculum, their units, their lesson plans, and use a tool that's already created in something like a Brisk AI or a Magic School, which are some education-specific AI tools, and tell it, here's what I'm teaching, please generate depth of knowledge questions, or in this case, SAT aligned questions for this content area, so that teachers within their own content can better now prepare students for taking tests without teaching to the test.
So, question. So the AI, is that the lesson plan work the teacher has to do? Is that AI basically more or less doing that lesson plan?
It's that 80-20 rule. So like the full-fledged lesson plan can be generated by the model, but then also going back in and really like actually reading it and understanding it. So really there is still that human element in there, and feeding the AI what exactly the class is as well, getting those specifics.
And you'll hear this more from Kimberly, talking about just what Dan just said, that human element, how we build an ecosystem that the human is always at the center, no matter what. Because this is not there to replace anybody. It's actually just to augment the work that we do and actually make us a little more efficient.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's kind of like, like especially with this one, because it's social studies based, we are able to feed it all the social studies curriculum. So it is pulling directly from that. It's just helping those teachers understand it.
So in other words, it's giving more clarity and more direction.
Exactly. Yes.
Great, well, thank you. So I know that, like I said, this is the first step in us talking next. You heard Tool mention Brisk. You'll hear about that. Caitlin Engel, one of our teachers at Norwalk High that's been doing a lot of work with Brisk and their students, will be in talking about that at our next meeting. But if there's any questions that you have, hopefully this gives you kind of an insight of some of the work that's been going on this year on helping to put this together. And when you hear more from Kimberly, I think, one of the things that's been the most exciting for me, and I've talked to Dr. Stray about this, is there's definitely an alignment in everything and how we kind of are guiding everything towards the portrait of a graduate. And you can even see the tools that we're using, the way that we're teaching, the curriculum that we're using, all of it's moving in that one direction, which is something that I can say I didn't see anywhere near as much 5-6 years ago in the district. And I feel like, it's just a better way for all of us to work.
Yeah.
Kids.
It builds a lot of efficiencies for the staff, even to differentiate learning for diverse learners in the school. But it also, you're looking at the instructional element, it will also create a lot of efficiencies for us, even at the central level. Because one of the things we've been talking about is creating bots for HR, where we control the information based on our own guidelines and use it as a tool to facilitate conversations around understanding either benefits, questions about their contract, and a whole array of different sources. So I know that they started.
We actually had a demo the other week, and Jose was working on that with them. That's a little bit different because it's so secure in some of those areas.
Mhm.
We're actually using different tools that are kind of locking it down. But we've introduced it to HR, and now what we're asking them to do is, as you get questions, like, so as employees are calling in, we're asking them, go on the bot and ask the same question of the employee, because you need to start feeding it information so that we can figure out if it's correct or not. So now they're kind of beta testing a little bit of it. So if someone calls in asking about, FMLA leave or, an attendance question, they can add that in while they're talking to the employee. And we're then being able to kind of like then assess how well it's working and stuff. So we're in the process of doing that as well too on the operational side. So it's exciting. It's a whole new world.
Thank you so much for coming. We didn't hear from the student though.
So,
While you do that, I'm gonna go sort out some other groups because we're over time.
okay, so what they were talking about previously, how the teacher sort of fine tunes the prompt. That's referred to as prompt engineering. And I actually had the chance to, in this after school program I attend, I had the chance to actually play around with so-called prompt engineering. And yeah, I've seen it pretty much work wonders for I guess really making it align with an idea. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, Daryl's on our AI committee, and he's been a really great insight for all of the the student facing tools that we know will be presenting next couple of months.
Yes.
And it's really great insight for us too of like, how is the student body reacting to all of this? Is this another like teacher book that the teacher's reading off of, or is it something that could be interactive with the teacher and the student? Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. Guys, I'll meet you at the next station. I'm just gonna make sure that they're queued up. So if you guys want to run it and just turn on the machine and we'll.
Next stage.
Chair. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Look at that, Amy chair.
Oh, the teams are moving? So if I sit here, I get to circle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the teams are moving.
Yeah, so Joe, just.
We made it easy for the.
Follow everybody.
Do we need to plug in? or-
I think. What kind of find your presentation?
Did you guys drop the temperature again?
It probably automatically goes back to the night.
I think it flips to the night while we're here.
Yeah.
I fixed it and.
Yeah, but I
it's
think it
feeling cold
automatically
again
goes
here.
back.
All right, I'm setting the timer. This. Press start.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Millie Erickson, and so I work with Sandra on the portrait of a graduate. And so tonight, and we're really excited to share with you about the work on the portrait of a graduate and its relation to AI. So, to that. Okay, so today's objective is to introduce Digital Promises AI Literacy Framework as a tool to connect AI with the portrait of a graduate. Digital Promise has been an incredible partner with us for almost a year now. And one of the individuals who we partner with pretty closely, Kelly Mills, actually launched or released this paper on Digital Promises AI Literacy Framework this past summer in June 2024. And so we've had the great privilege to continue working with them, not only on our portrait of a graduate, but to start thinking about how we align our portrait of a graduate with AI and specifically this framework. And so why AI and why now? And so Dr. Estrella mentioned this a little bit about how the skills that support students in becoming lifelong learners continues to evolve, and we expect this to happen. And one of those areas is AI. And so thinking about our portrait of a graduate and how it's really rooted in these durable skills. And how do we take this portrait of a graduate that's everlasting and start to align it with these skills like AI and supporting our students to continue to be those lifelong learners. And so as we know, AI is transforming how we live, work and learn and creating new opportunities as well as challenges. And so it's essential to prepare our students to be able to safely and responsibly navigate this technology. And I really want to emphasize here safely and responsibly. So when we think about this framework with AI, it's really centering the human elements of how do we support our students to be able to utilize this technology ethically and responsibly in a way that aligns with their core values. And so with that, then we're going to do a little bit of a thinking exercise. And if you could go back in time 15 years to when social media was just getting started, what recommendations would you make to educators about how to best equip our students for our world today? If we could go back in a time machine, what would you tell yourself then? How to support our students?
Before MySpace was just on the scene.
Let's say 15 years ago, we wouldn't have even imagined.
Can you imagine, right?
Doing now.
What would you tell yourself or tell the youth that you were working with? Some of you.
I mean, I think I would basically, continue to put them to thorough research as far as the computers are concerned, internet, further expand their knowledge from the information from the internet. Because that's basically what was going on really at that time, really, with the mud. So it's just more information from the internet.
And the whole safety conversation, to remember that whatever you put out there will stay out there.
Yes.
It's a whole new world.
The permanence of social media is something that comes up a lot, right? That we didn't anticipate.
Because the phones were out 15 years ago. So being very careful about the information that you are basically sharing.
Correct, yeah.
If I can chime in remotely, I would say on the flip side of that is to really help students be able to assess information on social media to kind of identify what is reliable and what is not, as I think that's a big part of the problem we're facing today.
Thank you, Colin. I forgot you were in the room.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, so this idea of that permanence and that what you put out there, it stays out there, as well as like this fact checking, right? And so that having all of a sudden this vast amount of information at your fingertips with the internet, but then also having the skills to critically think about, like, is this factually accurate? Or am I operating potentially in a filter bubble where what I'm receiving or what I'm getting, it continues to perpetuate the same narrative or the same story? And so I need to be evaluating what I'm seeing and thinking about and ensuring that I'm receiving multiple viewpoints or multiple perspectives on a topic or an issue. Which leads us into these digital literacy practices, which is part of the foundation of this digital literacy framework. And so there's 6 digital literacy practices that are good practices beyond just AI. And so the first is data privacy and security, understanding how to control settings to protect data that is being collected. It's really just taking care of yourself, right? And the privacy of your data. We have ethics and impact, or digital communication and expression. And this is to promote awareness of how one's participation on social media impacts themselves, but also how it impacts others. And thinking about how to use this responsibly and empathetically and engaging in online communications. The next is information and disinformation. So this is really this filter bubble understanding of, like, when we think about, for example, Spotify or movies, and that when you are listening to music, then it's looking at what patterns you like or what kind of music, and then it's recommending to you similar music, right? And so it's like, wow, like I just keep getting all this music that I enjoy and that all kind of sounds the same, right? And that's purposeful. And so recognizing when you might be operating within a filter bubble, and again, thinking and stretching yourself to think critically. And with music, it may be one thing, but when we think about the news or other media, then it's gonna be really important to think about why these certain articles are potentially coming into your inbox and how to think about or to push yourself to see other viewpoints or perspectives. The data analytics and inference, as well as the algorithmic thinking, abstraction, decomposition, is very much related to the understanding of how AI works or the artificial intelligence. And so thinking about like, it's more like that technical skill set, as well as the computer science piece, and understanding like the data that an AI platform was potentially trained on, as well as why it might be promoting, or not necessarily promoting, but continues to perpetuate these biases based on the data that it's trained on. So really that understanding piece. Which leads us into the AI literacy framework and the groundwork of this. And so this AI literacy framework is built on other technology initiatives that have come before it. And so while AI tools are new, the skills that we use to critically understand, use, and evaluate technology are more familiar and have been around. And so it's built on media literacy, digital citizenship, data literacy, and computational thinking are the kind of like these four pillars that it is pulling from per se. Which leads us into AI literacy, and it includes the skills to understand, evaluate, and use AI systems and tools. And so the definition is AI literacy includes the knowledge and skills that enable humans to critically understand, use, and evaluate AI systems and tools to safely and ethically participate in an increasingly digital world. So I really want to draw out the word safely and ethically. Again, it's really centering back in these core values of centering human judgment as well as justice, and ensuring that our students are using these in ethical ways that really are taking care of themselves as well as taking care of others. And so here we have kind of like the root of the framework, which is again, this understand, use, and evaluate. You'll notice that this three-pronged approach is very much interrelated, because as you use something, then your understanding builds. And as you use and understand it better, then you're also able to start to more critically evaluate that tool. And so starting to see potential gaps or errors with it, as well as its strengths. So for one example of evaluate is that ChatGPT can be an incredibly useful tool, but I found that it's not the best at pulling quotes. So when I was first putting this presentation together, then I was asking ChatGPT, like, I'd love some like great quotes about critical thinking and how it's related to AI and AI literacy. And it pulled out some beautiful quotes that no one ever said. And so when I looked up the quotes in the source, then it didn't exist. The papers did, but the actual words themselves did not. And so that's that piece of evaluating when we think about our students, right? And that we don't want them to be passive with this. And that I think AI, it pushes us to be really quick on our feet and to be thinking about like, why am I getting the output that I am? And is this actually accurate for what I'm looking for? So there's three ways that we can use AI that Digital Promise identifies. The first is interacting. So we think about this for like Spotify or for Netflix. When you're listening to something, it's collecting that data, and then it's going to provide you recommendations based on the data that it's collecting from you. The next is creating. So if you prompt ChatGPT, then it provides an output for you. So you're creating with an AI platform. And then the final way is problem solving. And so to problem solve, and this is when you're like potentially building an AI system. So it could be for say like a water filter or something, then you have a water filter that then is able to tell you what the toxicity is within the water. So that would be potentially solving a problem with AI. And then these are the three ways. So next we get into the understanding. As I noted, this is really building like that technical understanding of how the system works, as well as understanding how the AI is really built to identify patterns. And it's based on those patterns, and it's then providing like that output. And so equipping our students to better understand how this technology works, which will ultimately allow them to then be able to evaluate whether what they're getting is factually correct, as Colin noted, right? Or if this is, and also to recognize, like, is this potentially perpetuating biases? Is this, we had a conversation in our last one about artwork, right? And thinking about, like, is this, is the artwork, is that what I'm, is it representing what I'm looking for, per se? And then again, centering in those core values, always coming back to these core values of human judgment and centering justice, continue to be that root of this framework. And so when we put it all together, then we get the 6 digital literacy practices on the bottom that are embedded in this understand and evaluate. And then at the top, we have our 3 ways that we use the AI through interact, create, and problem solve. And again, in that core center, we have our core values of human judgment and centering justice, always coming back to that humanness component and ensuring that we're using this in ethical and responsible ways, and thinking about the benefits to using these technologies, as well as the potential costs or challenges that come with them to ourselves, to others, as well as to our society at great and our environment. Before I move forward, are there any questions or thoughts about this framework?
The control of it, like how, no, we're gonna talk to students about using it and their judgment. But how do we keep control of the bubble without them going out and getting other information or using the information as their own, like the control of it all?
I think that's something we will not be able to control. What we can do is inform and educate. Similarly with social media, one, I think of the pitfalls that happened when the rise of social media was taking place was that people didn't understand the magnitude of its influence and potential impact in the future. So we were ill-equipped to educate our students in terms of what are the things that they need to be cognizant and aware of. So one of the things that we're taking from that learning, from what we learned from the past, and now applying it to artificial intelligence, is like building the awareness for students to make informed decisions, right? Because even with these tools, there's a lot of misinformation. And what I mentioned earlier when Ralph was presenting, the system is generating based on the information that people have put out. So it's not necessarily always deciphering accurate or right from wrong. It's just outputting information. So part of our student education is, how do you make an informed decision by using this tool? And how do you educate yourself so that you can decipher hallucination, which would be inaccurate information that the system is producing? And then the other layer, which I think you are also talking about, is how do we educate them to be responsible consumers of the tool?
In addition, to what Dr. Estrella says, it's when is the tool actually a useful tool? Because you can use it in ways that can be helpful. And when does it start to actually teeter on being harmful? Like, I think plagiarism or things like that, where you're sort of no longer stretching yourself as a learner, or no longer stretching yourself as a writer, or even as a thinker, and you're cutting corners, for lack of better words. But the control piece is a piece that comes up a lot with educators also.
Which in actuality, you know your students, so you know the information that they're capable of delivering. So there's times where they may present something that's not from them, You know, and that part will be caught quickly, especially, you know, like I said, your students.
You're up to Q&A.
But they're gonna do it.
Or up to Q&A, okay, we could speak forward.
Moving forward.
We have 10 minutes, so.
Oh, okay, but we could, we know how, we can abbreviate.
We got this. All right. So when we think about tying the Portrait of a Graduate to this AI literacy framework, we have essentially what we've done is we've taken the AI literacy frameworks and thought about which competencies map best or strongest onto these AI literacy practices. And what you'll notice is that critical thinking comes up in every single one of these, which makes sense. Because when we think about our digital literacy practices, they're rooted in understanding and evaluating, which are key components to critical thinking. So when we think about that next layer for our critical thinker competency, it really felt like a great lever to pull with the AI literacy framework, because it's really very much enmeshed in critical thinking. And so here we have an overview of how these Portrait of a Graduate competencies overlay with our the AI literacy practices. And we think about for Norwalk Public Schools of like, what does this look like in terms of breaking it down in kind of like the implementation of this AI literacy framework. Then we break it into the teacher, the student, and the context. And so this is based on the instructional core that we continue to use when launching our critical thinker. And essentially this helps us to think about from the student lens, what do students need to be able to do as they understand, use, and evaluate the technology? What does this look like in our content as we provide opportunities for students to develop these practices? And then finally, the teacher component, which you got to hear from Ralph tonight about how we're supporting teachers in terms of developing their capacity to use, evaluate, and understand this technology as well. And so when we think about forecasting for our next sessions, session 2 will be on deepening critical thinking with the AI literacy framework. And so together we'll be diving more into that student component and thinking about what does this look like for students and providing an example of what it could look like in the content as well for them to develop these practices. And then finally in session 3, we'll be thinking about developing the critical thinking competency through effective communication and the AI literacy framework. What we've seen throughout this past year is how the importance and the parallel between, or interconnection, I should say, between communication and critical thinking. And that really it's about the critical thinking is the process. And then students need to be able to articulate their process and their thinking to others. And so that really is where that communication piece comes into. And so as we think about deepening our work with the critical thinker, we're really layering on these pieces or using kind of like a magnifying glass onto the AI literacy framework and the effective communicator. So those will be the upcoming sessions.
Six minutes for Q&A.
About this or even Portrait of a Graduate, whatever you guys, whatever might be on your mind.
I mean, right now, me personally, I mean, I asked what I needed to know,
Okay.
you know.
Did you see what you put up?
A lot of it's not gonna change where some of these kids are gonna come from. It's gonna help. Just like it's gonna help the teachers. But as far as the students are concerned, some are gonna take advantage of it. Which is something in our situation, if we didn't have changing to AI or going to AI, it wouldn't matter. But, you know, I think it's more from the critical thinking standpoint, you know, it sounds like it's giving them more ideals and more thoughts of it, you know, instead of just designated tools.
Yeah.
A thing that's going towards a variety of things comes up. But they.
And then there's another slide. Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I love that it's going to be able to help the teachers with the different levels of different styles of the children learning, the different levels of what the children's needs are, students' needs. I think it's going to be huge help for the staff.
There are ways that you can actually, there's a lot of time-saving ways that if people become more comfortable with using it as a tool, you know, you can actually garner like so many benefits from it. That's why we don't want to shy away from it because of the potential harms, like, but really actually start to embrace it so that we could take advantage of the tools and the ways that it actually can help people, you know.
Teachers were trained. They were trained.
I think Ralph has a team of teachers that are currently working on it with him.
Which part?
Teachers are being trained in this. I mean, it's varying degrees of people's comfortability with it, because there are people that are much more comfortable, and then there are people that have been just being introduced like others. But there's some teachers in district that are pretty versatile in their use. I think there's a teacher at Norwalk High that uses it.
You're talking about AI?
Yes.
One of the things that like I want to I've tried to make sure is that people don't feel apprehensive about utilizing the tool, and that there's no judgment in utilizing any of the AI tools as enhancements to build efficiencies around time, improve what's happening in the classroom. So I think that that's allowed people to freely utilize the tool. One of the things that we're trying to figure out is like, what do we purchase? And one of the ways that we're gonna be able to monitor that is looking at what is being utilized and at what frequency. Because a lot of these have like free options to utilize, but then when you wanna get into like the heavy duty tools and practices, there is a membership fee. So we're trying to figure out what is best path forward for us.
And I think that there are a couple of pilots right now, right? Like small pilots with people that are using it in like some platforms that I haven't even dabbled with, but there.
But even with ChatGPT, there's a 4 point, is it
4.0
4.0 that several of us have been using as a pilot, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
And then there's other tools that are, ChatGPT, for instance, is really good with language.
Yeah.
And there are other tools that are better used for like graphic design and creating like visuals.
Yep.
With impressive accuracy. And if you started using the tool like a few months ago, you could see the evolution of how sophisticated it has become and will continue to become as time goes by. I think on a weekly basis, these tools become more and more sophisticated. I mean, on a daily basis, they become more.
It's great for us to provide a platform for teachers and for students to just start to explore, because it's gonna happen whether
we want it or not.
Whether you're on board or not, it's happening all around us. So we might as well just be not be responding to it, but actually be experiencing it as it evolves. And Dr. Estrella has been the promoter of this since the start of ChatGPT. When we all were at cabinet together, and remember when it had released and we all were signing up and you couldn't even get on because so many people were trying to get on that those first few days, you couldn't even get on.
And I actually had the cabinet, we brought somebody in for them to engage in a day of learning of just like looking at all the tools that are available right now. And there was a lot of fascination.
There was a lot,
at what is available and what can be done. And to me, it's really important, not only that it's used to enhance learning experiences for students, but also to build efficiency for people. Because we already like are consumed with the amount of work that we have to do on a day-to-day basis at all levels of this in the system. And if this could build productive efficiencies, it's gonna be great. Or it's already great. It's gonna just get better. We just sell it together.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
if the board would like, we could create opportunities where we could, during the retreat in a few months, we can create an opportunity, we could bring some of the team to walk you through some of the different tools so that you can
Just to
experience for
explore,
yourself
yeah,
what
just
it-
to
what it's
explore.
like. And then you could use it on your own
Pretty-
personal time too, right?
Right.
We use it at work. We just started using it at work.
Right.
Yeah, so it's pretty well.
I'm sorry, can you?
What platform do you use? What platform do you use?
You know what? I have no idea. We
Yeah.
started using it. They're training us in.
Oh, good.
It's because we do so many different services.
Okay. Yeah.
It's seasonal. And because they have different marketing campaigns.
Yeah.
You can put in whatever you need to put in question.
Yeah.
And it just gives you the whole.
Yeah.
Plan. Write a letter, write a memo. I'm like,
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, I'm not doing this. You want us.
So maybe it's on. I don't.
I'm on the move.
See some of the stuff.
Oh, you got one.
I know.
Whenever you're ready. You good? Yeah, I'm good.
Find a seat.
Maybe I want to do that because I told them it was great Sunday. It's all about it. Okay.
Doesn't have.
I'll just one.
Number numbers.
Yeah, isn't that, wait, sorry, I can forward it to somebody, like, there's a new box up there. Trying to, no, that's not it. Okay, that's trying to, because that's a 7:05.
Yeah.
One of the things, Howard, that I was gonna say is like one of the advantages with digital primates that has been amazing is not only like what we've been able to get in terms of hardware, software, but it's also like the professional training and the accessibility to a national network of people. So when you saw like Kimberly present, for instance, and like even like our digital coaches, they're able to connect with people across the country and learn, like if somebody's doing something that might be more advanced, we can learn from them and hear what they're doing and learn from their pitfalls so we know how to more effectively implement. So with the portrait of a graduate, a lot of what we did was learn from other districts that had already started the work. So we were able to build out already, learning from other people's mistakes and implementation and like make sure that ours took some of those things into consideration. And that was really helpful. And I think that that's helped us have like a smoother one transition into the portrait of a graduate.
I have it up.
Because we learn, keep learning from other people's experience.
Okay, you can get that, that'd be great. Just not on the screen for live, but it's here. So.
Um,
So I'll get that set up. So Over the last 4.5 years, we have given the student use survey. This is our third time. And one of the pieces that I'm really excited is that we're able today to share some of the progress that we have seen with our students. And it's because of some of the work that we've put in place. And there are some things that left me with questions and what can we do differently? And there's some great correlations that we'll be able to see to things such as physical activity and participating in a team sport, which I think is really important, but we've seen a decrease. And so these are some things that Margaret and her team will share throughout the presentation about what we have put in place and what we are going to be doing with our next iteration. Right.
So for recording it, are you guys trying to record from this computer?
I got it.
Okay,
We're good.
we'll just look here.
Just hit the down arrow.
Yeah, thank you.
Streaming
Thank
because
you.
it doesn't.
That's just the podium. That's all that is out.
Great.
All that stuff's happening behind you.
Thank you.
This is like a technology question.
Wonderful. We're good.
Technology questions for about us.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks, Robin. Hi, everybody. So Margaret Watt, Prevention Director of Positive Directions. It's nice to be back here after having been here in September to tell you about this year's survey. We really, really appreciate the partnership with the public schools to administer the survey, gather this data. It's not just used within schools, it's used by the city and the community, by nonprofits. It really is a wealth of data, and we're only going to touch on some of it tonight. So I guess if you're my clicker, thanks. What I'll do is cover these areas in brief: demographics and background about our youth, what we learned about risk factors and protective factors. And then my colleague Nina Chinana, who is our local evaluator, is going to provide an overview of some of the mental health and very limited data from our substance use section, which is extensive and technology. So starting with the demographics, this was an incredibly robust survey. We surveyed 70% of all 7th through 12th graders with about 4,000 students answering the survey in full. That means that we can really trust that the data is extremely valid and reliable. Like most people dream of that kind of response rate to a survey. And what you're looking at here is how students identified their own gender, sexuality, race and ethnicity, MLOs, multi-language learners, IEP as students in special education. And what you can see is how diverse the student body is. And what you should also know is these are the factors we use to disaggregate the data. So all of the information has been looked at not only overall, but by all these factors. So on various slides, you will see a box in blue pop up on the right that says, here are the groups that were at higher risk, that were more vulnerable on certain factors who need special attention. If you go back for a second, I'm just going to comment because the question came up, gender identity versus sexual identity. When students identified as trans or non-binary, if that was an at-risk population, you'll see that come up. If they identified as lesbian, gay, bi or pansexual, or some other way on sexual identity, we put LGBS. If both those populations were at higher risk, then we use the acronym LGBTQ. So in terms of our students' lifestyle, there are 4 areas that all matter. They could be protective factors or they could be risk factors, right? They can support your physical and mental well-being or not. I'm only going to cover the first 2 slides. And in terms of sleep, I'm just going to say more kids need more sleep. But if you can go on, Rob. In terms of extracurriculars, we ask students about all these things that you see on the left. How much time do you spend doing these things on a weekly basis? And the thing that the most students do on a weekly basis, as you can see, is that they do chores. 85% of them are engaged in some form of chores every week. The yellow is that they spend 1 to 6 hours per week doing that activity. The green is if they spend 7+ hours. You can see that yellow is the primary one for doing chores, which means on average, an hour a day or less, okay? You can also see that about half of students say they perform some form of caregiving at home. Again, it's probably averaging less than an hour a day for those who do. And then look at the next set of bars. Students who take lessons of some sort or practice for their lesson, participate in a club, do something with their church, volunteer, or work if they're old enough to work. So there, what you see for each of those bars is about 3/4 of kids are not engaged in those particular activities. They might be engaged in some other ones, but we're looking at this as room for improvement. Because if kids are able to be engaged in more of these things, they gain skills, they gain confidence, they find mentors, they find friends, right? Also, you can see in the bar at the bottom that club participation decreased since the last survey and taking lessons decreased since the last survey. So I think to the extent, bless you, that we can have more club fairs so that students have more than one opportunity a year for 45 minutes to find out what clubs are out there, things like that might be helpful. Next. In terms of physical activity, we see that about a third of students are involved in team sports, most of them spending about an hour a day. About 2/3 of students do some other form of physical activity, like working out or being in some, club sport, right? That's not school related. But again, maybe most of them are doing 1 hour a day. And actually, team sports participation decreased from 44% last time to 39%. So again, sports participation creates teamwork, creates physical and mental health benefits. And you'll see, I think, soon where we think they're spending their time instead. Moving on to some risk factors. And these are things I want to emphasize again, that the schools are not responsible for all of these things, but as a city, we all work together to address these factors. So household factors affecting Norwalk youth. We see that about a third of kids are spending at least 2 hours a day. Again, these are middle schoolers and high schoolers are spending at least 2 hours a day on school days at home unsupervised. That's an opportunity to be doing those sports and clubs and things like that. Some of them are expending many more hours a day than that unsupervised. In terms of what we call ACEs or adverse childhood experiences, 14% have experienced food insecurity in their lifetime. 8% have experienced housing instability in their lifetime. We also found that 12% of our students have moved at least 4 times just since first grade. So some of these kids are 7th grade when they're answering the survey. So that's a lot of sort of disjointedness. As you can see, here's one of those boxes I referred to on the right to tell you who are the kids who are sort of more vulnerable in some of these areas. So males were more likely to be unsupervised. LGBTQ, Hispanic, and Black students were more likely to report food and housing instability. Students in special ed and multi-language learners were more likely to have moved repeatedly. I'm not going to go through that box on every slide, but I will just say you will see a lot of the same groups recur as being groups that are highly vulnerable. We also asked about discrimination, which CDC considered to be an adverse childhood experience, and many students reported experiences of discrimination, with racial discrimination being the number one. But of course, a student might be in many of those categories experiencing multiple forms of discrimination. And then another one of the ACEs, whoops, it's gone. It's back. Another form of ACEs is related to violence, experiences of violence. And what you'll see when the slide comes back is that students have experienced violence, witnessed it at school, witnessed it in the community, been the victim of it. And it's coming backward now.
I thought it was in there.
It's here.
I'll go back a couple more. One more.
And what makes knowledge gaps that
make
a full screen on that?
Yeah. Are you doing it or just doing it? So I know those are small to read, but while it's coming up, 5% of students said they had been threatened or injured by a weapon such as a knife or a gun in the past year. all those first 5 bars that I referred to, seeing violence or being the victim of violence at school or in the community, those are things that happened to our students in the last year. The last orange bar is how many students reported being bullied in the past month, and that was 8%. So something new we did this year, we've asked those questions before about experiences of violence. This year, we also asked what their response was. And that's that sort of glowing bright blue box on the top right, which says 11% of our kids said that they had themselves physically hurt someone in the last year. And 6% said that they carry a gun or a knife for their own protection. I'm sorry about the visibility of the slides here for the people who are online. Okay, a little more about bullying, and here's some good news. So over half of kids say they have never been bullied. There has been a decrease in the report of bullying in the past month since compared to our survey 2 years ago. There's also an increase in students saying that when bullying occurs, teachers always or almost always occur. So that's good. That's the pie chart on the, what's that?
They almost always intervene.
Yeah, what did I say?
Occur. It's okay.
The teachers almost always intervene. So that's the pie on the right. At the same time, bullying in this survey, as in the last survey, is most commonly occurring in the classroom. That's the #1 place kids say that it happens. #2 is hallways. And out of a list of locations, most of them are at school. So, and the last risk factor is just asking students about other factors that may disconnect them from, you know, solid peer group or a good school experience. So you see about 1 in 10 say they feel they are absent more often than other kids, like maybe truancy, or suspended or expelled or in legal trouble. And among the groups that are more at risk there, you see the trans, non-binary, students with IEPs, multi-language learners, and males. So moving on to some positive factors, we're going to talk about some protective factors. And starting with what students experience in the community or neighborhood. The question was asked about neighborhood and community. Lots of positives. So almost 90% say they have a trusted adult in their life that they can speak to about problems. 84% have a peer or a friend they can speak openly with. Then if you look at the bar chart on the right, we said, where would you get help if you had a problem? And they have various sources of support. There was an increase in kids saying they would talk to their parent or guardian, that they would talk to school staff, or that they would talk to coaches compared to last time. So that's all positive. Going back to the bullets, 83% say they feel safe in the community or neighborhood. That did decrease slightly, and the decrease was more in middle school, feeling less safe. And 80% said they feel that they have the needed support from adults in their life who are not school-based adults to help them graduate. So 80%, that's good, and also could be higher. Looking at supports that they see in school, the first bar shows you that 80%, so 4 out of 5 students said, I know how to get help at school if I have a mental health or substance use problem. So that's great. And similar to the last survey 2 years ago, it is higher in high school than in middle school. The middle schoolers don't know as well where to go for help. New question this year, do you feel you have the support from folks at school? And the question explained like guidance counselors, it listed some types of people at school. Do you have support from them to help you graduate? 73% said yes, so almost 3/4. 71% said they feel safe at school. That is a decrease from last time, but again, they feeling safe in the community. They do feel more safe in the community, but both decreased. So, you know, we're not sure exactly what factors. And it could be that there was a school shooting the week that they took the survey, right? That led to the decrease in safety. The last 3 bars are about connectedness and feeling connected to teachers increased from 56% in the last survey to 59%. The other statistics are similar to where they were before. And last, before I pass it on to Nina, is this time around, we asked them about how they feel about their future. So what you see is almost 3/4 feel confident that they will go on to a job or school after high school. And almost 2/3 feel their life is going in a positive direction. So those are both majority numbers, but I'm sure we would all love to see those numbers be higher. So I would end by saying this is a call to action. We have lots of really good things happening and Nina's going to talk about a lot of them. But there's plenty of room to support our kids.
So moving to behaviors, mental health, substance use, and technology. In terms of mental health, the first area we're going to look at is anxiety, acute anxiety. So what you're seeing here is young people who've experienced acute anxiety almost always or always. And we're seeing a decrease from 2024, from 2022 to 2024. So currently, about 1 in 5 of our young people said they had this acute anxiety in the past year, which is great news. If you look at the small box to the right, we also ask about sources of stress and anxiety. And for both the middle school and high school students, they are reporting those sources to be around their academics, their post-high school planning, and then some the high schoolers referred to their schedules as causing them stress and anxiety, and in middle school, it was their peer relationships. And when we look at the left side here, the first thing we're looking at is that persistent sadness or hopelessness. So we're looking at that depression. And the great news is when we asked this in 2021, 39% of the youth who took the survey said they had experienced that depression, and we've reduced that percentage to 19. So we're seeing a great decrease there.
I think one piece to add is that these were some of our focus areas when we were to look going back to 2021. This is when we were looking to bring in supports with agencies such as Mid-Fairfield and other supports such as drug and alcohol counselors, LGBTQ plus counselors to help with our students. And so we can see since 2021, we've seen a decrease in both of these areas. And I think that some of those supports that were in place are direct correlation to some of the results that we're seeing. I mean, even our adding elementary counselors to support our youngest students as well.
Yes, great results when we look at the considered suicide or that suicide ideation. We've seen a decrease there. We're now at 9% of the 7th to 12th graders who took the survey. And when we look at attempted suicide, that's down to 3%. And you will see in the next slide, do take a look at some of the subgroups as Margaret mentioned. So for both depression and attempted suicide, we see that the groups, the young people, the trans, non-binary, the LGBTs, that's lesbian, gay, bisexual, something else, and our females are all reporting higher rates of both depression and suicide attempts. And then we have a small increased group with our MLL around depression, and then slightly increased with the IEP. We look at suicide attempt data. This is a new question that was added to the survey. So of those 9% that considered suicide, they were asked what they did in that situation. So about a third talked to a friend, 21% talked to their parent. We had almost half who said they really didn't feel like there was anyone to support them at that time. But on the flip side, we had almost half who said they did know where to get help. And then about a quarter said they got the help. I think what we wanted to point out here was that in that blue box, you'll see there's a big difference in the middle school and the high school students in terms of knowing where to get help. So we have 35% versus 55%. And then there's also a difference when we see the percentage between middle school and high school when we look at getting help.
And so one of the things that it leads me to, like, we've put in a lot of supports in our high schools, but how are we supporting our middle schools? Because there's definitely a difference between high school students knowing where to get help and middle school students. So how can we start building in those supports in middle school as well?
We also have some data on self-harm, so self-harm, thoughts of self-harm, and then irregular eating behaviors. And it's great to report that in all three of those, we've seen a decrease from when we asked that same question in 2022. And then feeling lonely often, which is about a third of our students, that is a new question. So that's sort of our baseline right there. But we do, you know, as you see, there are some groups, again, similar to what we've seen that are experiencing the disordered eating and the self-harm at higher rates than their peers. And I'm just going to cover a couple of things around substance use. The Norwalk Partnership really focuses a lot on the prevention of substance use. We're really happy to see these rates are fairly low. This is lifetime use, so anybody having one or more drinks or any time in their entire life. And we really haven't seen much of a change in the past 2 years, which is great. The rates are remaining low. I think it's good to point out here the average age of alcohol, vaping, and marijuana use is between 13 and 14 years old. So you need to think about your 7th and 8th graders who are using, are often starting in middle school. And so just making sure that the education and the awareness is happening before those years. Also just want to point out that we typically do see the highest rates among our juniors and our seniors, and that continues to be the case. One of the factors we look at is perception of harm. So we know that the more a young person perceives a substance to be harmful to them, the less likely they would be to use that substance. So we really want to make sure that the education and understanding around that is in place. We do have fairly high percentages here of our young people feeling that it is harmful. We would love these to be higher. And when we look at these substances, not surprising, I'm sure, to anyone that marijuana remains the lowest. So there's still a sense that it's not as harmful to use marijuana when you look at other substances.
It's just worth saying that that is such a misperception because at their age, it's literally causing brain damage when they use marijuana. But there was an increase in awareness of the risk of marijuana since the last survey.
Yeah, moving in the right direction. So just a few more slides around technology. This first slide here, there's a lot on it, but I think if you look on the left, we have new data on the median age of getting a smartphone, which is 10.5 years old. And the median age of getting a social media account is 11.5. You legally should not be able to sign up for a social media account until you're 13. So there's obviously ways around that. And most of our students who took the survey have their own smartphone and they have their own social media account. The two pie charts on the right are showing you the amount of time that our young people are spending on social media and gaming. And this is daily hours. So those dark blue pie slices are 8 hours or more a day on social media and gaming. So we're seeing some 7% for social media and 6% for gaming.
And as you can see, 70% of kids are spending at least 1 to 4 hours a day on social media.
And so then when we go back to decrease clubs, decrease activities, one of the questions that we wonder is, does this have a direct correlation to the other? If I'm spending 5 to 7 hours or even 1 to 4 hours gaming, am I not joining a club? Am I not participating in a sport because I'm gaming? Or am I not doing those things because I'm on social media?
And then we have 2 slides around cell phone use. These were new questions in 2024. So you're seeing here about half of the students did feel that their cell phone use had a negative impact on their mental health. And then about a third of the students felt that their cell phones were a distraction in school, that it reduced their socialization with other students at the school, and that it interfered with them completing their homework. And looking at technology, 58% or just over half of the youth said they had tried to reduce their cell phone use in the past year. 45% said they felt more productive when they limited their cell phone use. And 38% felt their cell phone use impacted the amount of sleep they were getting at night, which aligns with the fact that we know they're not getting enough sleep. So that is it. There is more data, as we said, but if there's any questions on what we covered tonight.
No questions, but I'm impressed at the fact that they were honest about the cell phone information, right? Because you have the students that say they can't live without their phones, but seeing these percentages, it's total opposite of what we think, right? Same time, getting the information that we need in order to make changes and help support the students, and seeing either the decreases or the increases shows that a lot of the things that are being implemented last year slowly but are working.
It's so positive to see all the improvements in mental health. It really is. And and NPS and the city and all the nonprofits have all made such strong investments in trying to get our kids in a better place. And it's working if we can maintain all of that. And I think, one of the presentations tonight where someone was saying, are you still doing the teen nights out? So that's one of the things that the city funds that we run through the Norwalk Partnership is trying to provide kids with healthy social opportunities. But we're talking about, like you can see there's a limit to their social opportunities because probably of the cell phones and social media and the impact of COVID and everything else. And I think we're poised to have these discussions at the city and school level and with parents and educating them with this data and saying, what sets you up for a healthy future? And it's really much more social involvement and physical and mental health. And it's not all the technology, right?
And I just want to give a shout out to our counselors, social workers, psychologists. They're around every single day. But we're constantly tweaking. You heard some questions are new this year. We won't ask the survey again for another 2 years. So really being able to make adjustments as needed, like we added the cell phone question this year. That was a new section of the survey.
And as Nina showed quickly on one of the screens, like we have data on gambling behaviors. We have a section that was only asked in high school on sexual behaviors. So there's other parts of the data that we just don't have time for today, but the whole thing will be posted on the Norwalk Partnership website on the resources.
I think the thing that's concerning me is the supervised. The unsupervised, the supervision at home. That's a very important piece. Not having control over that causes a lot of issues and problems, that cause a lot of issues in school, cause a lot of issues in our community, cause a lot of issues at home. Because you don't know what's going on in your household.
So it leads me to say, how can we get more students into our after-school programs that we have? Our partnership with the Carver, because we have so many students that are participating in elementary, middle, high. How can we get more students to participate in those programs?
And at the high school level, they're less likely to want to do that, but more robust clubs and sports and activities, anything like that is helpful.
Interesting. Families not able to financially buy the after school setting. That's why those kids are alone. So it's just unfortunate. Nowadays, there's a time where the after school setting for the scholarship.
Yes.
But now
We're done right
now. It's And then another issue that comes along with it, from our extracurricular activity standpoint, how can it get from point A to point B? Now, how are they gonna get home? They participating, try out, but how are they gonna get home? So that's just gonna leave mostly kids that want to play. That's also becomes an issue. Right.
Those are all critical points.
Thank
Have a
you.
Yes, a financial solution for it. Everybody, yes. So I hope that these three triads or fishbowls allowed the board an opportunity to kind of see some of the dynamic work that's happening across the district. This is just a glimpse of the depth of work that's happening in collaboration with our coaches, our teachers, our central office team, and also our partners, because we couldn't do this work alone. We have a number of partners that have been supporting us through this process. And I think I mentioned to one of the groups earlier, for instance, our work with Verizon and Digital Promise, they have been instrumental in providing us hardware and software. The part that I think doesn't get spoken a lot is also they provide a lot of professional development and a network of support that is invaluable, because being able to engage and connect with faculty across the nation gives us free professional learning, as well as insight in terms of what advancements are happening in other places that we can learn from. And I use the example of the Portrait of a Graduate, for instance. We had some partners through Digital Promise that had been immersed in that work before we did. And we were able to learn from their pitfalls, so that as we designed our own plan of action, we were able to integrate some of that learning, and it set us off at a better foot than if we were trying to figure this out on our own. So I hope that tonight kind of opened the curiosity of the board to continue to learn more about the great things that are happening. And also for the public to see the incredible work that's happening within our district, and the importance of funding and providing the necessary resources so that we can continue to do this critical work. Because we've made great advancements and we don't want to we want to continue to move forward, not backwards. So as we continue to talk about the budget process, I think it's important to elevate the great accomplishments that the district has had, and the fact that we want to keep this momentum moving forward. So how do we keep top of mind the importance of all of these priorities that have yielded really great outcomes for our, and most importantly, these outcomes are representative of what our students can do better now. So improvements in what our students can do, because we've made our faculty stronger and better for that to happen, and we want to continue to do that. Any questions from the board before I turn it back to Madam Chair?
Well, I have a question. I just want to say, first of all, thank you. Thank you for the information. I think it's valuable to hear, and also to share the type of information that you guys are given. You know, I think the personal input, as far as, you know, all the three that we listened to were great, but I just feel the student survey is an excellent way of seeing how these kids feel and allowing them to express their opinions and their concern, and for us to do our due diligence to make sure that we can, you know, help them in any way that we can. So I truly appreciate this opportunity to learn more about it. So I'm excited to go to phase 2 to see where we're at, because the increase, the numbers that from the student survey, you know, the numbers that, you know, decrease, you know, from that time, from that 3-year time span to now, I think that's very good. fact that these kids are opening up about it as well, it helps us as well. So I know we got our work cut out because when we talk about, some of the time lapse as far as our students are concerned, supervised students at home, and the majority of them, to be honest with you, they're middle school kids, and some elementary. So that's concerning to me. So hopefully get to the point where wherever we need to get to try to go back to where at times where, there was transportation that was being provided to after school programs. There was transportation being provided, for kids to participate in extracurricular activities as well. So, but, thank you for sharing this information as well.
Yeah, and
Oh, go ahead.
I think that you raised some really valuable points, and one with the survey, looking at some of the progress that we've made that I feel is significant. A lot of that is attributed to a lot of the additional supports that we've been getting from a lot of our partners around mental health supports, et cetera, which we had to eliminate because those grant opportunities have depleted and we were not able to keep those services in our budget. So I'm highly concerned about the future impact of some of the resources that are becoming obsolete because we don't have the funding to continue the great work that has been happening forward. I think the second point that you made in terms of after-school programming and athletics, it's something that we've been grappling with because we know is a challenge. The challenge always comes down to funding and where do we find the resources to be able to afford adding additional buses to the fleet to be able to provide that service. And that's where our challenge always exists, because we added middle school sports that we didn't have in the past, but adding that additional component was not possible because of our financial constraints. But it's something that I just want you to know our team has been thinking about because it's an inequity.
I just wanted to speak to the survey results also, like really so grateful that we do this and that we have this information. I think it's particularly striking to see the depression rates and the bullying rates for our LGBTQ plus youth. And especially right now, like, of course they feel that way with the messaging that they're getting nationally. And it's really heartbreaking. And I hope, and I know that as a district, like we are gonna come together to support those kids. And I don't know if that means, bringing Triangle back, because I know it's been a few years. Maybe it's time for refresher training from Cadence. I know that they do a really wonderful job, but I would hope, especially our trans and non-binary youth, know that like you are safe here, you are valid. We see you, like, despite what you're hearing nationally.
And I think I can speak for our team that we reaffirm what you're saying. All of our children are our top priority. Their well-being is our top priority. And when they come to us, we don't pass judgment. So, and I hope they know that.
I was struck by the what seemed to be true honesty from the part of the students, that even in very difficult, dealing with difficult questions, students said in terms of depression or suicide, they said that they had thought of this or attempted. And I think in order for them to even write that down, they had to have a level of trust that they could say that, and it was untraceable, let's say. They didn't have to put their name on it. And I think that is the only way we can get genuine information that we can work on. I would like to emphasize what you were saying, that the overall impression I got, it kept coming 75, 75, 75, where 75% of kids really were not doing anything after school, were not involved in sports, were not involved in church activities, were not involved That's a large amount of time to not be doing something that is community building or affirming. And so that's a takeaway I have from it, that trying to get the kids more involved is of course. The other comment I'd like to make is it was very engaging tonight. I feel like a citizen of the world, rather global in terms of AI. That's, an international phenomena now, and I'm learning more about it. And I'm very happy that this wasn't a one-off, that it's in a series of 3, and that we'll be learning together and interacting together as we learn. I really appreciate that.
And it's interesting that you say, like, what was the term you used? I'm sorry, I don't want to misquote you, a global citizen. Because even when the coaches were talking about their learning experiences and being able to go to places and learn from the other places and what's happening, I think it's important to elevate that, because I feel sometimes when we talk about sending individuals to professional learning experiences, having them go out and explore what's happening out there. Sometimes people see it as a taboo or a misutilization of resources, when in reality, it's one of the best investments we make, because the education that our staff obtains from those learning experiences and being able to interact with other colleagues around the country and even the world allows them to come even better equipped and prepared back to us to help us further develop our capacity as an organization.
And it definitely develops excitement.
Yes.
And back to one of the fears of AI is that the machines are taking over, but no, the excitement only happens with humans.
Okay.
So on the AI front, I just want to say, Ralph, I can remember, I think it must have been like the beginning of 2022. And I remember we were sitting in council chambers and you made this little presentation about AI. Most of us had not heard of it. Like, we knew it was out there, but you were kind of warning us, and you were saying, this is here, this is here now, it's coming. You're gonna start hearing about it. Rest assured, we're paying attention. We will keep you informed. You're probably gonna hear rumors of like kids, lifting things and, cheating and like that. That's gonna be a concern over there. But this tool is really, really powerful, and we're looking into it. And so, like, kudos to you and to your team, and like the layering over the portrait of the graduate and the way that you all are looking at that. And then the coaches over here, like, I mean, this is incredible work. And the fact that we as a district it feels like kind of leading the charge, like here in our area here, with some districts, like this around it. So it makes me like really excited and proud. And so thank you for being leaders. I actually work for a technology company that has been dabbling in AI and offering us as employees trainings around it. But I learned like so much more tonight with you guys than I've learned through all of the things my company's been trying to do to get us to feel comfortable with it.
And I think one of the things that we can do for the board, and it doesn't have to wait till, we can create a session where we can invite you to come and learn. We did this with the cabinet, and then I know Ralph has been further engaging because we want to build capacity in a non-restrictive manner, because the word cheating, we don't like to use, because we don't want to build taboos around the concept, even for students. We want people to experiment with it and try it. And we've been very careful about that, because once you start restricting, then people feel scared to even admit. I'm like, I use it all the time. I'm the first one to admit it, because I think it builds efficiencies, and we want to build efficiencies across the system that make us better. And I think that it's allowed our staff and team to really run with it and really see the power of these tools in so many different ways. So if you guys want, we can definitely organize that because I think it would,
I'd love that.
it's gonna help you personally, but also broaden your perspective about how big this is and how much is already happening within the organization. Our coaches can help us do some of that.
I have a question. You guys promote, you guys. Can I say something?
No,
You guys, all of you did a good job presenting very thoughtful, comprehensive information, but I was gonna ask Ralph about AI. So what do you see happening next? It seems like you guys are on top of it and getting in front of what is to come. Is there anything that you think that we're missing or that we could add to it? And what do you see that perhaps is the future? What's coming next? Based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to kind of say what potentially is gonna end up being the future with this. We do know that, where we talk about the future is now. So the work that needs to go on with incorporating AI has to start happening now. We can't wait and say that this is something that's coming. We did that and, there's a question that Kimberly had posed when we started talking about the portrait of a graduate, like, when you look back, 15 years ago when social media was kind of in place, what could we have done differently? What we could have done differently is gotten in front of it as in education, and we didn't. So that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to make that same error right now and trying to get in front of it right now to make sure that we're addressing it from the get-go and not letting others define how this works. And so we won't be in the same situation with our students as we are with social media.
State doing any policy on AI and its use? Right, I'm not sure. I thought we talked about that. I don't know.
Yeah, so they are trying, I mean, I think it's, there are some AI policies that are starting to come out. It's really more around data and privacy.
Right.
More so than the use of AI. But the future really is, I mean, this is where education and the world is kind of moving towards. I mean, it's like, there's probably not one commercial you've heard on TV, that doesn't talk about the fact of something being AI generated or that it's talking about AI. Everything that we do this is getting immersed into our world.
but Ralph, you can also, like, the work that we're doing in collaboration with other districts across the country and working together to really get ahead of things. And engage in best practices. So I think that's also critical. And Ralph knows that this is like one of my
Features now.
topics of interest.
That's an understatement.
Any other comments?
Well, for me, I want to talk about the misconception in the public eye. Misconception that we don't listen to the students. We do listen to the students. Just the truthfulness and the confidentiality of the survey showing all that data, and that we've used those surveys to create programs to help students. And also the student advisory board that Dr. Estrella and her cabinet meet with. I mean, there's so many conversations that the public doesn't see. That doesn't mean that we are not listening to the students. And the data and the increases in the positive results is amazing. And, thank you to everybody that's involved in all of that. It's, unbelievable. Like Dr. Estrella says now, it's the hard conversations, the adult conversations. How do we get that funding? How do we make it move forward and not go backwards? People think that COVID is over. Yes, it may be over just as a disease, but it's not over in the education of a child.
So I turn it over to Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Public comments? Anyone online? Raise hands. We have public comment on today's topics.
If anybody's would like to make any comments, please raise your hand.
Okay. With that, Thank you, everyone. I know it's been a long day. Thank you for all the information and spending the evening here with us. Thank you for joining us this evening. It's great to see a student here with us also. And motion to adjourn. Ashley, seconded by Mary Ellen. All in favor? Aye. Good night, everyone, and
Good
thank
night.
you. Thank you all.
Thank you.